Some people consider the instant of physical death an opportunity to examine one of life's greatest mysteries: what remains when the gross body reaches its end. Since many traditions assert that body and mind are temporary expressions of a deeper principle, they often teach that consciousness or awareness continues beyond the body's dissolution. According to certain perspectives, the gross physical form is the only element that truly perishes, turning to ashes or dust. Meanwhile, subtler layers remain. Within the subtle framework, there is thought, emotion, memory, and a deeper sense of knowing, all described as traveling forward once the physical shell is no longer functional. In some teachings, this remaining subtle body is said to carry karmic impressions and ingrained tendencies, leading it through different possible realms or states. Some people explain that there are higher and lower realms, often called Lokas, where such subtle bodies may dwell before reincarnating or fully merging with a more profound reality. Those who lead a life filled with positive actions or devotion could ascend to higher realms, sometimes likened to beautiful paradises. Another direction might be what is typically referred to as lower worlds, where negative mental imprints create difficult experiences. Still others who have grown indifferent to sensory enjoyment might enter more refined spheres associated with continued spiritual progress. One analogy offered is that of a grand 10-star hotel, which symbolizes certain heavenly realms predominantly catering to sensory delights. If someone has ascended beyond these bodily cravings, a pure devotion or longing for truth might carry that soul to subtle spaces more supportive of quiet practice and spiritual focus. The emphasis consistently falls on the direction set by actions, desires, and abiding attitudes formed in the terrestrial life. In some branches of practice, the crucial aim is full awakening to pure awareness before the moment of death. It is said that when such realization dawns, the chain of rebirth is transcended, and consciousness is no longer compelled to roam through successive physical bodies or different dimensions. This direct recognition is sometimes described in simple terms: realizing, here and now, that the mind is not the core of identity. Once the boundary of mind dissolves, the unbroken sense of presence shines through, revealing an ever-existing unity often termed the pure self. That insight cancels the usual drive toward further wandering, as there is no longer a separate entity to migrate. According to those with this perspective, the question of traveling from realm to realm loses its urgency once the luminous truth of awareness reveals itself directly. For others who do not reach that pinnacle of self-knowledge, the subtle body continues its journey, guided by the sum of desires and karmic momentum. The concept of between lives or an interim state arises here, suggesting that an individual can linger in intermediate spheres before taking on another form. Some teachings depict a realm of departed ancestors, sometimes called a Pitri Loka, where souls pause or commune briefly prior to moving forward. In any case, the subtle body's destiny is shaped by the quality of mental and emotional habits cultivated in the previous life. Those who practice devotion to a personal form of the divine may dwell in the realm of that chosen ideal, rejoicing in that being's protective presence. If strong attachments and negative emotions persist, other possibilities come into focus. Everything pivots on the state of mind cultivated in daily existence. A few reflective traditions then shift to the topic of free will versus destiny, noting that people often wrestle with whether everything is predetermined by cosmic law or whether freedom truly exists. One pragmatic stance says that although absolute freedom remains elusive for most, it is beneficial to behave as though personal effort matters. By consciously choosing constructive goals and performing noble actions, the tether of limited free will can gradually lengthen, assisted by higher grace. On the other hand, assuming there is no freedom at all can foster apathy, undermining personal progress. In many teachings, it is also observed that genuine free will unfolds only for the truly liberated, while ordinary minds operate under layers of conditioning. Nevertheless, stepping forward with intentionality can increase momentum toward clarity, allowing what is initially a constrained will to expand in scope. Some people discuss how this expansion of will or personal power occurs in practical life. At first, trying to adopt new practices, such as rising early for contemplation or prayer, can seem daunting. The mind resists, held by habit. With repetition, however, the attempt becomes more natural. As the mind aligns with uplifting routines, it discovers unexpected reserves of energy. Through persistence and perhaps sincere yearning directed toward a higher principle, the constraints of mental inertia begin to recede. Eventually, the desire to do what once seemed difficult or impossible transforms into a genuine preference. This process shows how destiny and free will can intertwine. External circumstances might be guided by past tendencies, yet the will can still find a route towards self-transformation when harnessed wisely. Teachings on mind management and emotional well-being often reinforce the importance of realigning from within before forming close attachments. Young people, for instance, can face identity crises and attempt to solve them by looking outward, whether through relationships, substance use, or other distractions. However, the wisdom gleaned from older traditions points to the need for internal stability as a foundation for harmonious interactions with others. Without addressing the anxious or restless mind, relationships can become entanglements where two unsettled individuals compound one another's difficulties. By contrast, if a person first nurtures self-awareness and learns to generate peace from within, that calm baseline can be shared beneficially with a companion. Mutual respect, commitment, and genuine kindness are then more likely to appear, rather than fleeting alliances based on insecurity. This emphasis on internal culture applies equally to parenting. Families that introduce simple practices like mindfulness exercises, calm breathing, or short meditations give children an early familiarity with a steadier mind. By incorporating teachings on kindness, self-discipline, and healthy boundaries, parents help reduce a child's susceptibility to peer pressure or self-harming behaviors. If a younger mind is trained to look within for contentment, it becomes less dependent on external stimuli to feel good. That independence can reduce the risk of addiction, whether to substances, social media, or any other temporary fix. Such proactive measures support emotional maturity, so that a teenager or young adult is better able to navigate challenges in academics, relationships, or personal growth without tumbling into prolonged despair. Some realized sages have demonstrated how an awakened perspective dissolves attachment to body and identity in striking ways. One renowned figure has been depicted as so deeply absorbed in higher awareness that he scarcely felt vermin bites on his legs. Another story recounts how such a sage remained utterly unconcerned about scathing articles printed against him, stating that the barbs were directed at a name that, in the sage's perception, was unrelated to ultimate reality. These accounts highlight the difference between intellectual acceptance of spiritual ideas and their living embodiment. For those individuals, the sense of someone harming me was absent because the separate sense of self was transcended. Their example reminds seekers that unwavering peace lies beyond fleeting identifications with name and form. Alongside direct insight, certain sacred texts also help refine understanding. A text known for its uncompromising clarity in the non-dual tradition is sometimes referred to as the Ashtavakra Gita. It consists of an elevated dialogue between a youthful sage named Ashtavakra and a wise ruler named Janaka. The text underscores that pure consciousness remains the bedrock of every changing phenomenon, existing before birth and persisting after physical death. Ashtavakra's guidance insists that a person is fundamentally the radiant presence of awareness, birthless and deathless, and that this truth can be recognized immediately if the mind ceases its constant outward focus. In dramatic stories associated with these characters, Janaka experiences a direct awakening upon hearing the teaching that the witness of dream and the witness of waking are one and the same. By turning inward to that steadfast witness, illusions of limitation vanish. The narrative of Ashtavakra includes vivid details about his early life. Born with bodily deformities due to a parental curse, he nonetheless possessed a keen perception of scriptural knowledge even in the womb. Legends describe how the young sage overcame the mightiest scholars of the time, eventually guiding King Janaka to the highest realization. The discourses in that text bypass complicated mental strategies, pointing repeatedly to the timeless presence underlying all ephemeral states. For many readers, simply reciting a few lines from it after a session of meditation can bring a jolt of recognition, dissolving tension with the reminder that one's true nature is not entangled in passing sorrow or fleeting euphoria. In everyday application, glimpses of that deeper identity can alleviate common challenges. If moments of jealousy or anxiety arise, reflecting on the teachings that highlight awareness as ever free can diffuse the intensity of such emotions. Observing them as transient appearances in consciousness breaks their hold. Rather than latching on to negative states or fueling them with further stories, the individual can note their arising and dissolving, unshaken by their impermanence. Over time, the habit of referencing this vast internal space makes it easier to refrain from reacting rashly or indulging in self-destructive impulses. Such methods do not mean retreating into apathy. On the contrary, clarifying the deeper reality can empower a person to act more effectively in the world, since the mind is no longer clouded by illusions of limitation. The combination of devotion, mental discipline, and inquiry fosters a flexible intelligence able to handle life's complexity. In that sense, a carefully tended mind is not just a personal asset, but also a service to others, because it contributes a stable presence to family, friends, and the broader community. The possibility of pure realization here and now has been echoed by various saints and teachers across centuries. To them, the difference between the spiritual aspirant and the realized one is primarily a matter of recognizing what was never lost, the luminous consciousness that animates every thought and sensation but is not confined by them. While many might be drawn to lesser heavens or ephemeral experiences, the highest opportunity is to see the unchanging essence in the midst of life's kaleidoscopic dance. Some might still pass through subtle realms after the body dissolves, but the final resolution happens when the self recognizes its identity with eternal awareness. With that understanding, the tension between free will and destiny also relaxes. By aligning with truth, each choice contributes to a more awakened life. In this manner, the rope of limited volition gradually extends, and the overshadowing power of fixed destiny wanes. Will is cultivated through reflection and repeated action, eventually blossoming into unshakable clarity. Overcoming negative patterns and forging a pure intention to help or uplift others becomes natural. Even beyond specialized teachings, a sincere call to realize authentic selfhood can invite grace that accelerates the journey. Parents, educators, community leaders, and individual truth seekers alike all have roles to play in preserving and sharing this timeless wisdom. By introducing it early, confusions about identity or misguided quests for fleeting pleasure can be minimized. Those grappling with depression or addictions could be encouraged to look within to tap a source of strength that does not rely on chemical or external stimuli. Constructive habits like regular meditation, service-oriented action, or scriptural study can then replace destructive cycles, granting the mind enough clarity to reach toward higher glimpses of truth. Through such consistent practice, awareness begins to shine ever more brightly, gently melting away restless desires and the illusions that magnify suffering.